What do our eyes really see? We often take our vision for granted, trusting that what we see is an accurate representation of the world around us. But is it? Our eyes, while incredibly powerful, don't always provide us with a perfect reflection of reality. In fact, what we see might be a mix of sensory information, brain interpretation, and the limitations of our biology. Let's dive into the fascinating world of how our eyes work, the science behind visual perception, and how what we think we see might not always align with what's actually out there. The visual process. From light to brain. Our eyes are essentially biological cameras that capture light and turn it into signals that the brain can process. When light enters through the pupil, it passes through the lens, which focuses it onto the retina. The retina is lined with millions of photoreceptor cells, rods, and cones which convert the light into electrical signals. These signals travel through the optic nerve to the brain, where they are processed and interpreted to create the images we see. But here's the catch. What we actually perceive isn't the raw data from our eyes. It's a constructed image that the brain assembles from this input. Perception versus reality. The brain's role. Our brains play a huge role in what we see. The visual data our eyes receive is incomplete, but our brain fills in the blanks, making educated guesses about the environment. This means that our perception of reality is actually a reconstruction of the world based on prior experiences, context, and expectations. For example, optical illusions are a perfect demonstration of how our brains can be tricked. In many cases, we think we're seeing something that's not there, or we misinterpret the depth, shape, or motion of an object. This highlights the fact that our vision isn't just about receiving light, it's about interpreting that light in ways that make sense to us. Color perception. Not all eyes see the same. One of the most intriguing aspects of human vision is how we perceive color. Our eyes are sensitive to a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum known as visible light. The colors we see are wavelengths of light that hit our eyes, with different wavelengths corresponding to different colors. However, the way we perceive color can vary from person to person. Some people are colorblind and may see colors differently from others, and even within a normal range of vision, people may have unique sensitivities to different wavelengths. Interestingly, some animals see far beyond the visible spectrum. Bees, for instance, can detect ultraviolet light, which is invisible to humans. This means that what humans perceive as a simple flower might be a far more vibrant and different world for other creatures. Blind spots. What we don't see. Even though our eyes work efficiently, we still have blind spots in our vision. This occurs because the spot where the optic nerve connects to the retina has no photoreceptor cells. The brain compensates for this by filling in the missing information based on surrounding visual cues. The result? We don't usually notice the blind spot because the brain fills in the gap, making us believe we have a complete field of vision. What about peripheral vision? While our eyes are highly specialized for detailed central vision, our peripheral vision, what we see out of the corner of our iris, less sharp but highly sensitive to motion. This ability was likely developed for survival, alerting us to threats in our environment. Peripheral vision doesn't capture fine details, but it helps us remain aware of our surroundings and detect changes in light or movement. The brain then decides whether those movements are worth focusing on, guiding our attention to the source. Motion and depth perception. How we see movement in space. When we look at the world, we don't just see static images, we perceive movement and depth as well. Depth perception is enabled by the way our eyes work together. Our two eyes are placed a few inches apart, and each eye has a slightly different view of the world. The brain uses these two images to calculate depth, allowing us to judge how far away objects are. Motion is similarly perceived by the brain, which interprets changes in the visual field over time. When we watch something move, like a car driving down the street, our brain processes the changes in visual information, allowing us to track the object's position and predict its future movements. The limits of vision. What we can't see. There are many things that the human eye cannot perceive. For example, we cannot see infrared or ultraviolet light, as they fall outside the visible spectrum. Similarly, our eyes are not adapted to detect extremely small objects, like individual atoms or particles smaller than the wavelength of light. Additionally, our eyes are not sensitive enough to detect certain changes in the environment, like shifts in atmospheric pressure, sounds outside our hearing range, or electromagnetic radiation beyond what we can see. Our visual system is tailored to specific ranges of stimuli. What we can see is just a small part of the total reality that exists around us. The power of the mind, vision, and imagination. Not only do we interpret the world around us through our eyes, but we also see things in our minds. Our imagination can conjure images, faces, and scenes that don't physically exist. This ability is another example of how the brain takes the raw data from the world and creates a complete experience, using both sensory information and mental constructs. Our eyes are powerful, but it is our brains that ultimately create the rich and complex visual world we experience. Whether we're seeing something for the first time or recalling a memory, our perception of what we see is a blend of the external world and the mind's inner workings. Conclusion: the unseen reality. So, what do our eyes really see? They don't simply capture the world around us as it is. Instead, they send signals to our brains, which interpret, adjust, and even fill in gaps to create a meaningful visual experience. Our vision is influenced by biology, physics, and our brain's unique way of processing information. What we perceive is only a fraction of what exists, and the true nature of reality is far more complex than meets the eye. The next time you gaze at something, remember, what you're seeing is not always the whole truth, but just a glimpse into the ever-evolving world inside your mind.